I'm a Bloomberg Fellow.
I am a Bloomberg Fellow.
I'm a Bloomberg Fellow.
And I'm a Bloomberg Fellow.
I'm a Bloomberg Fellow.
And I'm a Bloomberg Fellow.
I'm a case manager for people living with hepatitis C.
Director of Suicide Prevention.
Historian and preservationist.
Detective with the Threat Response Unit.
An attending physician in the emergency department.
I work at the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy.
Bronx Connect.
Fort Lauderdale Police Department.
Get Healthy Philly.
The Hawaii Department of Health.
Food and Water Action.
I became a fellow to make sure addiction is seen as a disease.
I hope to do my part in ending youth homelessness.
I became a fellow to find new ways to address the effects of vacancy and abandonment.
I hope to reshape the food system to promote community and ecological health.
I became a fellow to strengthen primary prevention of human trafficking.
I hope to collaborate toward solutions that are bigger and smarter than what we are up against.
To promote social justice for people who use drugs in marginalized communities.
To promote mental health and decrease risk among minority youth.
To help reduce our nation's gun violence crisis.
To attack the true root causes of unhealthy environments.
Join us.
Join us as we work to save lives.
And build a healthier future for our country.
And build a healthier future for our country.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys for joining the Bloomberg American Health Initiative Violence webinar. My name is Shannon Jones. I'm the Marketing and Events Manager with the Bloomberg American Health Initiative. Today, I'll be joined with my colleague, Shane Bryan, our Partnership and Engagement Officer, along with Faria Zaman, our Fellowship Officer. We're also very excited to have with us some special guests. One is our Bloomberg Fellow, Paul Griffin, who's the Legal Director of Child Justice, along with Eileen King, who's the Executive Director of Child Justice. Lastly, we'll be joined by Holly Wilcox, who's an Associate Professor here at the Bloomberg School of Public Health. So we are very, very grateful to have you guys a part of our webinar today. We'll hear some exciting things about the work that they're doing, as well as their involvement with the initiative. If you have any questions during this webinar, please don't hesitate to send us an email. We can be reached at bloombergfellowsmph@jhu.edu. So without further ado, I'll turn the webinar over to my colleague, Shane.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And thank you all for tuning in and learning more about the Bloomberg Fellows program. Just want to run over a quick agenda for what we'll be having for you today. We'll talk about our 5 focus areas, our cross-cutting themes, the approaches to our work. You'll hear more about the violence focus area, in particular, how that relates to the Fellows program. We'll also be able to show you some work of our fellows, answer some frequently asked questions, and most importantly, you'll learn how you can apply. Let's go ahead and jump in and learn more about the focus areas to start off. We have 5 of them: addiction and overdose, adolescent health, obesity in the food system, environmental challenges, and violence. We take a broad approach to each of these focus areas. For today, we'll talk more about violence, but as an example, we are not just looking at gun violence. We're thinking more holistically, community-based violence, structural violence, suicide, and the effects that those have on the community's health. Another example with environment, we certainly look at climate change, but we're also looking at air quality and a built environment and how that affects that particular community's health. And that's across all 5 of these focus areas. We want to make sure that we're taking broad approaches, looking at the work that you're doing and how that affects your community's health, the neighbors of your various communities. So let's go ahead and talk about our cross-cutting themes. We have equity, evidence, and policy. Equity is the lived experiences of the individuals who are involved, and also ensuring that as a national initiative, we're connecting with communities all across the country, urban, rural, suburban, and we want to hear from you and learn about your work and how you could be a part of this initiative. Evidence in public health is all about the data. We want to ensure we're collecting rich data and using that data to inform our programs. And policies are at the national, state, and local level, but also organizational policies, understanding that the policies at your organization greatly affect the way that you engage with and support community. Our approaches are also threefold. We do research, practice, and education. Our research is impact-based. We're funding research opportunities to create toolkits, programs, and policies that are transferable from one community to the next. In practice, we're supporting faculty in our 5 focus areas to take innovative approaches to working with communities and organizations addressing the needs of those communities. And with education, that's where our Bloomberg Fellows program comes into play. So Faria, do you want to kick it off and tell us a little bit more about the Bloomberg Fellows program?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Shane. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us. So I'm excited to tell you about the fellowship program. First of all, this is a very unique type of scholarship program. It's impact-based, and it targets those individuals who are working on the front lines of any of the 5 focus areas. Bloomberg Fellows center their studies in their particular focus area. They engage with their organizations, and once they complete the MPH program, Fellows serve for at least 1 year with their organization following graduation, and that is called the service obligation. And the organizations continue to participate in an ongoing network of practice and research with the Bloomberg School of Public Health. I also want to say that the fellowship program is open to all kinds of organizations. It can be a governmental organization or a small community-based or a non-governmental group. We really don't have any restrictions as long as the organization is based here in the US and is working in at least one of the 5 focus areas. And Shane, would you like to elaborate a little bit about the National Network of Practice?
Sure, thank you, Faria. With our National Network of Practice, we're bringing together organizations, the fellows, and the school to make an impact on the 5 focus areas across the country. We're particularly interested and excited to connect and engage with the non-traditional public health organizations, such as Child Justice, and you'll hear how they do their work and the work that they do shortly. But we also have individuals who are from police departments, the law enforcement community. We have folks who are lawyers in the DA's office. We have people who are librarians. We really take a broad approach and are excited about the opportunity to use the lens of public health to further the work of you and your communities. We bring together everyone through a national convening we call the Bloomberg American Health Summit. It's where the thought leaders in all of these areas come together to move us forward, to provide energy and best practices of how we can work with and empower communities to take ownership of their health and ensure that we're planning and looking toward the future, using public health as the lens to do just that. So I think next we're going to talk about the full-time and the part-time program, opportunities for you as applicants to be a part of this.
Yes, thanks, Shane. So the fellowship program is open to those who want to pursue the MPH degree on a full-time basis or on a part-time basis. For the full-time, the program is 11 months here in Baltimore on campus, and we have 5 8-week terms that begin in June and finish up in May. And for the part-timers, almost all of the classes can be completed online. And typically it takes about 2.5 years to complete the program on a part-time basis. And part-time students have a maximum of 4 years to complete the MPH part-time. Typically, fellows take 1 to 3 courses per term, and as I mentioned, each term is about 8 weeks long. But it's really up to the fellow and how many courses they can manage while juggling their jobs. I'd also like to give you just a sample of some of the courses that are offered. There are hundreds of courses, and this webinar is focused on violence, so I wanted to share with everyone just a little bit about some of the very interesting and innovative courses around the violence focus area that are offered. And you can see we have programs from public health and the law, to suicide as a public health problem, to issues in injury control. You have a lot of interesting choices. And as long as we're talking about classes, I'd like to just take this opportunity to introduce one of our amazing fellows, Paul Griffin. Paul is the legal director for Child Justice. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Paul, I thought it'd be interesting for everyone to hear just a little bit about the kind of work that you're doing for Child Justice.
Well, I'm a legal director and an attorney at Child Justice, and what we do is we represent what are called protective parents in child custody cases involving domestic violence or child abuse or child sexual abuse. What that usually means is a couple will have a child, and it has to be a child in the relationship for us to be involved, and one of the partners in the relationship will engage in intimate partner violence or child abuse of the child, and then the protective parent will file for custody in that case to protect the child from any possible abuse or exposure to domestic violence, and that's where we get involved. We come in and represent them in court. One would think it would be an easy thing to do, that judges would step in and automatically act to protect the child, but unfortunately we're finding that they're much more difficult than that. It requires a lot of work, a lot of evidence to present to the court, and of which there's often, particularly in child sexual abuse, not a lot of evidence. So it's a very demanding, trying job, very fulfilling. I love it very much. And one of the nice things about rolling in with Johns Hopkins is my job has a lot of science involved, a lot of mental health, a lot of physical science, and dealing with a lot of studies and a lot of other information we try to get to the court to show them why this particular case fits in with a pattern of abuse, or why this child's acts are consistent with a child who's been abused, etc. So I'm finding that the work I'm doing at work and at school have a nice overlay with one another.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear, Paul. You know, you are one of our part-time students, and right. I wondered if you could say a little bit about how you're balancing your coursework and also working full-time.
Well, like anything else, it's trying, but it's definitely doable. The school makes it as easy as they possibly can for you. I try to take 2 classes per period. But the school will work with you if you have issues, like we have the COVID right now when this is being done, and I am stepping out this semester to deal with the COVID on the home front in our house. So hopefully others don't have that problem. But they do everything they can to help you balance it. The school will provide you with tutors if necessary, and they'll make it very easy for you to find a tutor. All you have to do is kind of show up. So the school does everything they can to help you on this front. I'm balancing it by working my job during the day and attending my classes at night, usually video, but I will be, because I'm actually in Baltimore City, I will attend some in person. So I have that luxury. And then, of course, you know, the weekends come in and I'll do some catch up there on some of the lectures if necessary. And the work always seems to get done. So the school will work with you on trying to reach a balance.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thanks, Paul. Just one last question I have. I wondered if you could talk, and you touched on this a little while ago, but I wondered if you could talk a bit more about applying some of the skills that you're learning now in your coursework to your actual job.
Sure. In addition to some of the specialized narrow classes, more narrowly focused classes like interpersonal violence that the school offers, some of the more, I'll use the word generic or core classes are real applicable as well. Like I said, I deal with science. I deal with mental health professionals who will testify both for or against my clients, and they will introduce different theories, rely on certain studies. As a lawyer, you know, I did not have training in this area, so I would read studies and I wouldn't be able to determine the validity of them. When you take courses like epidemiology or statistics, these courses are invaluable for me, at least, because I now can actually read a study, or I'm getting to the point where I'll be able to read a study on my own and be able to make validity determinations about, well, this study is not valid because the N was too small, or whatever the case may be. So I'm finding that even the core classes that don't seemingly have a direct function in my job, in fact, actually do.
Okay, wow, that's great to hear. Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
Thank you, Paul and Faria, for that great conversation. Next, I'd like to bring in Eileen, who's the Executive Director for Child Justice. And thank you so very much, Eileen, for joining us today. We're excited to have you. And can you start by telling us a little bit more about your background and work with the organization, please?
Yes, happy to. So for over the course of about 21 years, I lived and worked in what are now called life-sharing communities for people with disabilities, both children and adults. I did that in the United States, in Northern Ireland, and also in Germany. And when I lived in Germany for almost 9 years, it was a constant question for me and many of my friends, how could the Holocaust have happened in Germany? And that was a burning question. And part of the question was, what do you do if you see something happening around you? And, do you have the courage to step up and step forward? And my inspiration then was a group called the White Rose, who were young people who were absolutely brave and tried to fight against the lies and misinformation of the Nazi regime with truth and with information to the populace. They lost their lives because of that. And I studied them and was inspired by them. And when I was coming back to the United States, my sister, who was a lawyer in Washington, D.C., said, well, why don't you come to D.C. and help me out? I'm starting a new nonprofit. We're dealing with child abuse, child sexual abuse. And she said, by the way, did you know that our mother was sexually abused as a child? I had no idea. I'd never heard that. And so that reinforced this thought of like, here's the question. Here is that big question. What will you do? Do you have the courage to turn towards a really difficult subject, a subject people don't want to hear about, a subject where the children are often invisible, unhelped, suffering, silenced, betrayed? And so that was back in 1994 when I came back from Germany and started up then. And when I was working with my sister, we were inundated with requests for help from what we now call non-offending protective parents, usually mothers. And I was so floored by what was the stories I was hearing about how difficult, in fact, how impossible it was for protective mothers to find any sort of, not just justice, but protection in our family court system. And so when the opportunity came for me to merge with another organization, Justice for Children, and begin working on these cases, I did that back in 2001. And one of the first things I did was reach out to the large law firms in Washington, D.C., because I thought we've got to get really good attorneys involved in this. And my first contact was the law firm of O'Melveny and Myers. One of the first people I met there was Paul Griffin, who was a young associate. And that's how our working together began almost 20 years ago. And so that I've never lost that sense of amazement and shock and will to find a way to be helpful, because one would think over the years this would have gotten better, and one would think that with the research done with the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which all of you of course know about from a public health perspective, that we now have incontrovertible evidence that what happens to children affects them, not just then as they're going through it, but their whole adult lives in so many ways. And the more adverse experiences they have, the more serious and sometimes lethal the consequences are. And so there is no question why children need help and why the adults protecting them need that kind of legal support. And I think Paul and I every day ask ourselves, why is it so difficult? And so I'm truly thankful that Paul is getting the educational, I would say, reinforcement of these absolutely essential fields of knowledge that are directly applicable into the legal scenario, into the legal cases that we have on a daily basis.
That's great, Eileen. Thank you so much for sharing that background and the wealth of experience that you bring, not only to child justice, but also to this network and being a part of this important work. And something I think you greatly highlighted is through this Bloomberg Fellowship program, we want to connect with those who are doing such critical work. And it isn't about, taking a turn in a career or changing the way that you do your work, but it really is about using that lens of public health to further and deepen the impact that you can make. And I think that you all are doing that. And we're so excited to have you part of this network. And if you wouldn't mind, Eileen, can you talk a little bit more about what your experience has been like so far as a collaborating organization?
Well, I have to tell you very honestly, my main experience is really through Paul. And so it's very kind of, as I said, essential to our work. One of the things that we're able to bring to the table in our legal representation are engaging with local experts in Maryland. And these are people with experts in, say, physical bruising or coercive control or domestic violence or child abuse, child sexual abuse. And it is key to have not just a broad, but also a deep understanding of these areas. Because when you have an expert come in, and Paul has touched upon this and probably could speak for 3 hours about what this actually means in application. When you have a person who has that degree of expertise in, say, coercive control or physical evidence of child abuse or bruising, you have got to know how to best use this person and also how to defend them against, the opposition who will try to discredit them or delegitimize the points that you're trying to make. And so Paul's expertise in being able to do this, in my personal opinion, and I would say in our successes that we have in our actual cases, puts him at the forefront of being able to take these extremely difficult, long, challenging, really heart-rending cases. And that's where I see the fruits of his engagement with the fellowship. It's absolutely direct and applicable. It would be very strange if you were studying and somehow the studies were kind of off to the side and, oh yeah, it's great, I'm gonna get a degree in this. But one of the things that, and I'm sorry, I'm ranting on a little bit, but one of the things we see is that we often will get cases that have already had a period of litigation already. And what you often will notice is that those attorneys who may be taking these cases with a great deal of goodwill and wanting to be helpful, they don't have that level of, say, scientific expertise to bring to the table. That means that they are not able to make the best use of the evidence to apply what the science that is known and to help really educate the court, because that's what we're doing. We're educating the court, which is huge.
Absolutely. And another great component you bring up, Eileen, is that this Bloomberg Fellows program isn't about just getting the degree. We certainly ask for and expect our fellows to share that knowledge and share that learning with their colleagues and their team members. So we're happy to hear that it's working for you all and that you all have found great success and benefit from this. And we'll ask that Paul and Eileen stick around. We're going to go through some frequently asked questions at the end that we might be able to direct some and hear your insight. Next, I want to bring in Holly Wilcox, who is an associate professor here at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, with affiliations primarily in mental health, but also with joint appointments in health policy and management, the School of Medicine, and the School of Education. Holly's research focuses are within suicide, prevention, depression, intimate partner violence, and universal interventions, and I'm sure quite many more. But Holly, if we could bring you in, and can you tell us a little bit more about your work here at the school, and particularly as it relates to the Bloomberg American Health Initiative?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you today. I'll talk about two projects that I've been involved in currently and in the past. One involves trying to improve the use of data and evidence for suicide prevention. And so right now we're engaged in studies that use data linkage. Our taxes pay for a lot of data, and oftentimes it's not used to inform prevention. And so I've been focused on ways to think about accessing those data and linking them together to identify folks who are at risk, or groups or communities at risk, and to evaluate whether specific policies or programs are effective. Because you could do both of those types of things and more if you can get data linked together so that it's usable for action. So that's one example of something that I'm engaged in. Another is the potential missed opportunity with health education class. All students take health education while they're in school. In some states, it starts as early as 5th or 6th grade. And so thinking about a way to embed high quality mental health content into the standard school curricula. So I'm working on a number of projects because it's sustainable and it's just part of the way they teach in a school. You don't have to get parental consent. If it's embedded in the curriculum and it's approved by the superintendent and the principal of the schools. And so those are two initiatives that I've been focusing on with the Bloomberg American Health Initiative support. I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing more about that. And another component that we've just lightly touched on so far in this information session is within the violence focus area, and more broadly when we think about violence and maybe we hear about it on the news or reading our daily newspapers, we see a lot of information about gun violence and how that is most certainly impacting our communities, Holly. But we know that a great deal, as you mentioned, of your work is in suicide and suicide prevention. And so can you tell us or talk a little bit more about how we can take that public health approach and understanding both how suicide is violence, but also how we can work in and with communities to start digging deeper and working to prevent the unfortunate growing trends of suicides across the country.
Yeah, thank you. The majority of gun-related deaths are actually suicide. Most people don't know that, but 60% of firearm-related deaths are suicides. And there's a lot of work we need to do to try to make things better for families who've lost a loved one to suicide, and for people who are struggling with mental health concerns and suicidal thoughts. In the United States, we've had such an orientation towards crisis response, rather than thinking about ways to prevent people from ever thinking about suicidal thoughts or ever thinking about making an attempt. And so a lot of the work that I've been trying to do is trying to get upstream and to think of different supports that can be put in place in communities and other settings that serve and will come into contact with suicidal people to try to prevent those things from happening. And of course, maybe we can never fully prevent all of it, but I think if we could restructure nationally the way we're doing things, we could potentially make more of a public health impact. And I personally believe that's going to be through taking more of a public health orientation and approach to the problem, rather than waiting for the crisis to happen and then intervening.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. I know that many of you who are watching this presentation and thinking about applying are probably working in the field of supporting young people who have been affected through violence, those working in the intimate partner violence arena, and suicide. And these things are not just areas of our careers or our work that we're doing, but on an individual level, many of us have been affected by these issues, not just within the violence focus area, but all 5 of these focus areas of the Bloomberg American Health Initiative. And we want to ensure that through this training and through this opportunity, you can learn a variety of different skill sets, and you can really start to work towards finding real, true, long-lasting solutions. So Eileen, Paul, Holly, thank you all so very much for sharing more with you. And Fari, I think bringing you back in, I think people are really gonna be ready to apply after hearing everyone talk and learning more about this program. So I think you're ready to tell us how we can do that.
I am ready, Shane. Thanks. So first of all, I want to let everyone know that during the first week of August, we are going to announce the next call for fellowship applications. So beginning in and around August 1st, you will be able to access the fellowship application forms, and that is when we will begin accepting applications for June 2021. Now, to apply to the MPH program and the fellowship program, applicants should apply to both together at the same time. So for the MPH program, you should review the requirements on the MPH website, and they have very explicit instructions on how to apply to the MPH. And I want to let everyone know that all MPH admissions materials have to be submitted through SOFIS, and that is the name of the application processing system that the Bloomberg School uses. So your transcripts, your letters, your essay, all of those materials have to be submitted through SOFIS to apply to the MPH program. And at the same time, you would apply to the Bloomberg Fellows program. And as I mentioned, starting the first week of August, we will have our fellowship applications. You can download them right on our website, complete the forms, and also submit them on our website. And we have two fellowship forms. One is the applicant form, and the other is the collaborating organization form. And both are brief, both have 3 to 4 essay questions. And the deadline for applications for this year will be December 1st. And so that means your fellowship application and all of your admissions materials for the MPH program, everything has to be submitted no later than December 1st. And I think that's everything in a nutshell for now. The next thing we'd like to do is show you a brief video. The video features 2 of our Bloomberg Fellows, Josh Peterson and Kate Vanderteeg, and both Josh and Kate are working in the violence focus area.
Tonight, the nation must answer a question. Is now a good time to talk about gun violence in this country?
Nearly 665,000 women were victims of domestic violence. Domestic violence, put simply, is a chronic national epidemic.
Violence is an issue that tears communities apart. It doesn't just impact the victim of violence, but it impacts the victim, the victim's family, impacts the community around the perpetrators. So when I think about violence, I really think about those stories. I think about the victims, their families, their parents.
Communities really hold the answers to being able to not only support survivors who've experienced violence, but also prevent it from happening in the first place. With the help of the Bloomberg American Health Initiative, we're able to ensure that the survivors who've experienced violence and trauma are getting specific resources that are tailored to their needs.
And so I think really through the fellowship, we're going to be able to marry our technical expertise and our resources with the on-the-ground skills and knowledge from the community to solve the problem.
We're truly peeling back to figure out why are people using violence in their lives in the first place.
What we offer is we have a team of outreach workers who have a phone that's on 24/7. And so our line of thinking is that if we can do some early intervention and provide some services, we're able to help get them on sort of a different path.
And I'm in a training and those light bulbs are going off for folks. The bench is deeper for people who are trying to reduce violence, harm, and oppression in people's lives.
It is so great to see the work of our fellows and the great things that they're accomplishing. And that's just a really small example. We have fellows all across the country working on a variety of settings and really truly making a positive impact. And we know that you watching are going to be a new fellow and you're going to bring that experience within the communities you work with and the lived experience that you have to further grow and improve the work that we're doing. So before we tell you ways you can stay connected, we have a few frequently asked questions that we want to share with you all. But I want to say that if you have any questions at all after watching this or learning more about the fellowship program, do not hesitate reaching out. Bloomberg Fellows, mph@jhu.edu, or you can reach out to any of us here, and we'd be more than happy to chat more and answer your questions. But to get started, I just have a few questions, and Faria, I think I'll start with you. As you know, many of the folks who apply to the program have been out of school for many years, some as much as 10 or more years, and they haven't taken courses during that time. What should those individuals know as they start preparing their application?
Well, that's a great question, Shane. I want to let everyone know that many of our fellows have been out of school for 10 years, even 15 years. So it's not uncommon at all. The couple of things that I tell prospective applicants who have been out of school for a long time, one is talk to the MPH program to get a really clear understanding of their admissions requirements. If you've been out of school for a long time, you would be required to take certain prerequisites, namely math and biology, and it's important to talk to the MPH program to tell them about your background, and they'll be able to provide guidance on what prerequisites are necessary for your application. And these prerequisites have to be completed before you can matriculate in June, and the MPH program prefers that these prerequisites are actually taken as you apply for the MPH program. And second, when you become a Bloomberg Fellow, we are here to support you, and we provide academic support. So if you need tutoring or assistance for biostats, epi, or whatever, you need only to ask, and the initiative will provide that support to you.
Thank you, Faria. Another good question that folks often ask is, what is it that you're looking for in an applicant, in an individual who's applying?
Yeah, that's another great question. So we're looking for change agents. We are looking for people who are working on the front lines of any of the 5 focus areas, people who have a commitment to continuing working in that area and a track record, people who want to make change and want to make difference in their communities. And I also want to add that when we review fellowship applications, we place the greatest weight on what the applicant says in their fellowship form, but we also place a lot of weight on what the organization says about the applicant. We want to hear from them. Tell us about your applicant, tell us about their accomplishments, their potential, what you envision them doing once they receive the MPH training. This is all really important information that we look at during the review process.
Great, Faria. And Paul, I think I'll bring you in for this particular question. It asks and poses that a number of concerns that people bring up are related to going back to school. So they're working full time, and through this program, they'd be going back to school. And a lot of them don't have that traditional public health background.
Sure.
So can you talk a little bit more about some of the supports that are available to the fellows?
Sure. And I didn't have what one could consider a traditional public health background working in the law and domestic violence, but I think we would all be surprised how much is out there that people do that actually does have a public health component. The school is very supportive, as I mentioned before. There's tutoring programs here. Really all you need to do is let the office know what class you have that you may or may not be having, you're concerned you have maybe having trouble with, or you're afraid you will have trouble with, and they will line up a tutor for you who will work with you, and if you're a fellow, the school will pay for it. So they make that really as easy as they can. And that's really applicable to all classes, of course, but some of the harder classes that if you don't have a traditional health background like biostats or epi, which you think you might need help with, it's perfect for that. It really is. I was out of school for about 20 years, and I was pleasantly surprised how easily it came back. And part of it has to do with, and I think people who apply for this will have some intellectual curiosity, that you'll find the classes themselves to be very stimulating. Even if it's a core subject that you don't think you would normally take, you'll get that intellectual stimulation from it. It'll motivate you to study, to do what you need to do, and the school tries to make it absolutely as easy as possible for you. Do not hesitate if you're here. Do not hesitate to reach out for help even if you don't need it yet. Just because you think you might need it, they'll be there to help you.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. And I think that through the initiative, all of us on the initiative team are here to support you. And
absolutely.
We're always excited, and Faria does such a great job of just checking in with fellows and making those connections to the various resources. And Eileen, I think a very common question and concern we get from organizations as they're considering this as an opportunity is, what's the catch? You know, folks are always concerned that there's a buy-in or it's going to add to an already very limited time they have. So maybe you could just talk a little bit more about what catch, if there is one, and you know, what it is to be, you know, the time commitment from you as an organization.
That's a hard question to answer because I'm not finding a catch. I'm like searching my mind and like, well, where you're talking about the catch, maybe there's a catch I haven't seen yet. I haven't seen a catch yet. I do know that it's a great privilege for child justice to be associated with Bloomberg Public Health. I do know that a public health perspective totally works into the very basis for why we do the work we do. Because of, as I mentioned already, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study from back in the 90s, mid-90s, the public health perspective, which is also a trauma-informed perspective, is huge. It goes to, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name already, the speaker before. When you're looking at violence, when you're looking at suicide, when you're looking at child abuse, when you're looking at overall health, basic questions are, what did you experience as a child? When you're looking at incarceration, when, you know, all of it is tied to a public health perspective. So my sense is that Bloomberg brings it all to the table. And that's an enormous gift for us, because then we can say, you see, we know why these things are needed. We know why it should work. We know what we need to do.
Thank you. And yeah, that's, you know, we don't ask for organizations to provide any funding or financial support.
No.
And it really is about meeting organizations where they are and finding mutually beneficial opportunities for collaboration and connection. And so I will say, for those of you who are tuning in and considering this opportunity, if that question comes up for you, or your organization has some questions that you're not able to answer, we are also here for them. And so please, you know, have them reach out to us, or you reach out and let us know. We'd be more than happy to connect with your supervisor or a member of your team who has questions. And we have a really great frequently asked questions section on our website just for organizations as well. So don't hesitate bringing those questions to us. You know, as you're considering this opportunity. And Faria, you know, we always get the question of what restrictions are there for the types of organizations? So you walk us through, you know, that question.
Sure, Shane. That's another good question that we are often asked. And I just want to make it clear to everyone that we don't have any restrictions for organizations. As long as the organization is based here in the US and is working in at least one of the 5 focus areas, they are eligible. And as I mentioned, the organizations can be a governmental agency, it can be a healthcare system, a hospital, it can be a non-governmental organization, a small community-based group. And just to give our audience some ideas of our organizations, you know, we have, for example, the EPA. We also have, you know, a library. You know, we have child justice, which is a legal clinic. So we have, you know, public health departments. We have small community-based organizations in rural parts of the country. And we are very diverse in terms of where our organizations and fellows are coming from. And we welcome not just people from the traditional public health background, you know, traditional organizations such as a public health department, but very much want outside of the norm, outside of the traditional public health world, and welcome organizations that are out of the public health departments, such as the libraries, as I mentioned, or the legal clinics, or the small community groups.
Yeah, thank you, Faria. Holly, a final question I have for you is, folks are often looking, and applicants are thinking about the ways in which faculty are able to work or have worked with communities or organizations. Can you touch on that briefly about the ways that you've been able to connect and collaborate?
Sure. So I have mentored some of our Bloomberg Fellows, and I teach one of the problem-solving courses. So just some of my observations of the fellows in my course, many of the assignments that they do for their courses are applied, and they can actually take those projects and implement them, which is really something that's very exciting. So those projects take on a whole new life. You know, they're kind of peer reviewed, they're reviewed by their classmates, the faculty. They can hone them and shape them and then just get them implemented, which is, you know, I think is just remarkable. Also, if they're on campus or even if they're off campus, there are many opportunities to collaborate with faculty if you have specific interests. And you reach out. Many of them have work groups that you could take advantage of and be part of. Many times they're remote. Actually, they're all on Zoom now. Many of the faculty members try to work with students to have more of an individualized plan for them based upon their interests and their goals. And so that's really trying to enhance their skill set and the things they learn while at Johns Hopkins. The idea is that it will improve their skill set for their work and their job, and will enhance the work that they're able to do in the future after they get their degree. And so there's really kind of a focus on how to enhance the skill set of the students. So when they graduate, they're even at they have more capability to carry out these projects, to be a change agent. The other benefit that I see of this program is that not only partnering with faculty and working with faculty, but many of the other students that are fellows are leaders. You know, they're people who are doing work. And one thing that I've noticed in being involved with this program for the past few years is they wind up finding and meeting some of these great collaborators who really can help them carry out these projects and really enhance the work that they're doing in their job. And so that's kind of like a secondary benefit, I would say, of being in the program, is really establishing these great networks and connections, not only to the faculty, but to the other students and fellows.
Great, thank you so much. And then I think our last question, Faria, I'll ask you, what if an applicant, a Bloomberg Fellow applicant, does not get into the MPH program? Can they still do the Bloomberg Fellows program?
Well, if an applicant is not admitted to the MPH program, they can reapply the following year, because in order to be considered for the fellowship, applicants have to be admitted first to the MPH program. So if someone is not admitted the first time, I always encourage people to speak with the MPH program to find out how they can strengthen their application and try again the following year. And we have had applicants who've done that and have been successful.
Great, thank you. And thank you. These are, again, some of our frequently asked questions. We have more of them online with responses. But we ask you to just let us know, reach out if you are curious, you want to learn a little bit more about a particular component of the fellowship program. We are here for you. And Shannon has some additional ways for you all to stay connected.
Thank you, Shane. Yes, so there are tons of opportunities in which you all are able to stay connected, to hear all of the exciting things that the initiative is doing, and also to stay up to date on when we will open our application cycle for the upcoming class. So if you haven't had a chance already, we welcome you to subscribe to our newsletter, the American Health Dispatch. It comes out every Friday. It has some exciting news on the initiative, including new research that faculty may be working on. We also just released a new series, Fellows on the Frontline, where we're highlighting our Bloomberg fellows who are on the ground doing the work in their communities, and we're looking at how they are responding to the COVID-19 crisis. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our American Health Dispatch newsletter. We also have a YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is filled with tons of videos. You'll see playlists from our summit that Shane spoke about earlier. We have seminars. There are tons of videos around recruitment and just some really insightful videos that we think you guys will really enjoy. We are very active on Twitter. If you don't follow us already, please follow us at American Health. We stay active and we're up to date on all things COVID-19 related. We share information about the fellowship program, webinars that we release. So please follow us if you don't already. And lastly, our website. So our website, in addition to our fellows program and the fellowship page where we offer tons of resources and information about the fellowship program, the website also has a lot of great resources on there, including toolkits. We have policy briefings. There are tons of research and information that you can find on our website. So there is no way or no reason for you to not be able to stay up to date with the things that we are doing. And I just want to give a special thanks to our visitors, our participants for today, Eileen, Paul, Holly. Thank you guys so much for joining us and just talking about the work that you're doing and how you're involved with the initiative. I'd also like to thank Shane and Faria, my colleagues, for leading us through this great webinar. And Shane, Faria, unless you guys have anything else to add, I think this is the end.
No, just want to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.